My baby dolls, we are back. And in the immortal words of our radio producer and host, a zigzag man, Ralph Tycho, we are back with another episode of Genesis. As always, I am your host, Ian Kahanowitz. And today, we have another great show coming up with for you and everybody who's a baseball enthusiastic person. And what we have today is an organization created by a young man named Taylor Duncan. It's down in Georgia. It's called the Alternative Baseball Organization, Inc. We're going to get into it and talk a little bit about it in about 2 minutes. And it's really going to be an exciting show because, you know, I always say baseball is for everyone. And a lot of people, as we're going to find out, laws are protected. Sometimes there's discrimination against people with handicaps. But if baseball is truly a religion and it applies to everyone, it should apply to handicapped players. And we're going to discuss what this young gentleman is doing to move this forward for people who are in love with baseball like the rest of us. But you are listening to the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And as I mentioned, the Zigzag Man, Ralph Tycho. He's our producer, and I do a show with Ralph every week. It's called Giants Baseball. And we go back to the New York Giants, and, of course, we talk about the modern-day San Francisco Giants. You could also catch me on David Nemec's Old-Time Baseball and Trivia, where I do a podcast every week with renowned author David Nemec, and Saber historian Alan Blumpkin. And those two shows could also be heard on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And, of course, my baby here, Genesis. And, you know what's interesting when you do these shows? People come from all different places. You know, last year we had the Italian League in Italy. The Tomato League, it's called, and so minimal in Italy compared to soccer, as we call it. They call it football. But as you all know, I needed a translator because, you know, I Skyped it over to Italy, and it was just a fantastic interview. We learned a lot about Italian and European baseball. Today we're going to learn about autism, and we're going to go to Dallas, Georgia, and Dallas is a city. We know it's a city in Texas, but did you know it's in Georgia, too? Dallas is a city in and the county seat of Paulding County, Georgia. As of the 2014 census, and I'm reading it right from the Internet, the population is about 22,604, almost like where I live in Massachusetts. My population is around 25,000. Dallas is a northwestern suburb of Atlanta, located approximately 30 miles from downtown. It was named, and I bet you folks don't know this, for George M. Dallas, who was vice president for the President of the United States at the time, James Knox Polk. And Polk was president from 1845 till 1849 and expanded pretty much the West with the Mexican War for all you history buffs. But that's where Taylor Duncan resides. And his organization, the Alternative Baseball Organization, the ABO is a developmental instructional sports organization that teaches skills to apply both on and off the field to teens and adults with autism, Asperger's, as well as other disadvantages. This is very important, folks, because this gives a place for people with handicap to go and enjoy baseball, like I mentioned earlier in the show. Without any further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you
know,
the
opportunity is great.
The opportunity is even better for me. You were born with autism, weren't you?
Yes, I was diagnosed when I was around 4. And I had speech issues, anxiety issues, sensory issues, you name it. I had to go through a lot of hurdles and obstacles, but my theory and my philosophy is this: if you really want something, you'll get around those obstacles. and with the help of my mother, my dad, my teachers, my coaches, my mentors in the sport, when I eventually was able to start playing at a later age, I've been able to get to where I've been able to get to today, and I'm very thankful for God for providing me all those avenues. And here's the thing, too. So let's just say this. My philosophy is this. If you want to take a road trip from Atlanta all the way to Los Angeles, and there's an obstacle, the Interstate 20 is blocked in Dallas, Texas. So you're not just going to turn around and go home, are you? No. Instead, you're going to take an alternative route to help you get to where you want to go, and that's just the same way in real life.
You know, that's a great philosophy because I have twin boys, and they're going to be aged 10 this November. And one of my kids, but they did not make the diagnosis at 4. But by the time he was 7, they said he was right on the spectrum, which means that there's a possibility they could have a scintilla of autism or maybe not. And they'll never know with the current research they have. Where do you fall on the spectrum of autism?
Well, it's just such a wide spectrum, and it varies from person to person. They say I was moderate, but as time went on, I've been able to work on so many things. They gave me an updated diagnosis of higher function in 2012 only because they did away with Asperger's diagnosis.
Now, were you...
They did away with it completely. They don't use it anymore.
So let me ask you this. Were you considered Asperger's, which, again, is a higher functioning form of autism up until 2012, I guess?
Basically, yes, sir.
Yeah, because... now, let me ask you this. Growing up, when you were in elementary school and then going into junior high school and high school, even with, autism, how did it affect your work, and did it affect it at all? My son seems to be doing good with proper, help he gets from the teachers and at home, and he can function and do just as well as a student. Did you share that kind of experience?
Well, what we had to do was we came together on a plan to help me excel, not only succeed, but excel. And from what I remember, we did have our issues, of course, yes, like with anything in life, but we had a plan, and for the most part, we stuck to it, and, it was successful. I graduated high school with honors after, here's the thing, I went to public school from elementary school all the way up to the end of 6th grade, and then I was homeschooled, and then started doing an online program in high school. And so we had a plan pretty much throughout my whole entire school time, and I wound up graduating high school with honors, and it's just a great feeling. It really is.
Now, did you go on to college after that, or your learning stopped right then and there?
I'm just learning stuff here and there, sir. There was a lot that happened around the time I graduated high school, so between family members' health issues and some funerals we had to go to, there really wasn't much time.
Oh, all right. Let me ask you this. Well, born in 1995, a young man of 21. You grew up in an age of baseball, which I saw evolve over time. Big money, big names. Atlanta was huge when you were a child. What got you into baseball?
Absolutely. Atlanta was a big force back in the 90s and early 2000s. Though I remember going to a game in '06 and they lost pretty badly, I have to say. I hate to say that about my hometown team, but, I really wasn't a fan of that trade that sent Mark Teixeira to Atlanta for a year and a half.
And let me ask you this. When did you start your love for baseball? Right away, like, you hold the bat, ball, and,
Probably around 2000-ish. That was around the time I swung a bat for the first time. Tried the T-ball a little bit, but because of developmental issues, of course, I wasn't able to do very much of it at the time. But I just continued watching, and I kept learning from guys like Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling, and Ichiro Suzuki was having his first year, I believe. It was either 2000 or 2001 he had his first year, and he kept inspiring me too, because he came from a completely different background than most major leaguers.
Yeah, well, there was 2001 when he was a rookie, and I think he won not only Rookie of the Year, I think he won the MVP that year. He hit like 350.
Yeah, the
And,
man's a legend.
oh, and he's still playing. Is he playing on the Marlins still?
Yes, sir. And he says he wants to go till he's 50.
Yeah, so does what's his name in hockey, Yager. He wants to go.
Jaromir Jagr, yes, sir.
He wants to. Let me ask you this. Now, when I played Little League ball in the 1970s, we didn't have these waivers that you signed that, they're not liable if you get injured and all this other stuff. We went on the field and we got yelled by coaches, and if you didn't do good, you didn't play, and you sucked it up, and the coaches yelled at you in front of the parents. Today, that's not like it. Let me ask you this. You said in a lot of your interviews, you had issues getting on the field in baseball because you were deemed a medical or injury risk because of your autism diagnosis. But isn't that applicable to everyone else?
Can you repeat that? You kind of faded in and out.
All right. Let me ask you this question. You mentioned in a couple of your interviews that you had a hard time getting on the baseball diamond because all these leagues, and
Right.
everybody thought you were deemed a medical or injury because of your autism diagnosis. But like with the waivers we all signed for our kids and other kids, isn't it the same kind of risk of injury and medical problems for anyone for that matter?
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you my best answer to that. If you really have the instruction and you really have the mentors to take the time with you and you go out and seek the help, you can really turn what most deem a disability into a disadvantage. That's just been my whole philosophy. I don't really like to note things as disabilities they are medical issues, but with the proper plan in place, you could turn that really into a mere disadvantage. If you really want it bad enough, you'll make her happen.
My question is that I'm surprised that they did not give you a chance to play on the field because you were diagnosed. They thought you were like a time bomb or something, as you mentioned in one of your interviews here.
Basically, the anxiety and that stuff when I was much younger, I just didn't have the fine motor skills back then. Mechanics were kind of clunky compared to everybody else's who had training for years and years and years.
And let me ask you this. When did you begin in your mind saying, you know something? I love baseball. People saw me having issues. I'm going to start something that maybe can help others with similar experiences like me.
Absolutely. It was a dream of mine that I've wanted for years and years that I've been around, and because there were no baseball programs for folks like myself, the only option was to play regular adult slow pitch, which it's not really fast pitches and the rules are a lot different, but it was the closest thing that I had in the areas. So I was thinking, maybe I could start something not only for myself, but to provide it for others who may want the encouragement, the acceptance, and really develop it enough and structure enough to give them the confidence needed for them to fulfill their dreams, whether it be in our program or whether they want to take it to a more competitive level.
And you know what's interesting about this? This just sprung up last year. You went to social media, Craigslist, and you did the recruiting yourself.
Yes, sir, pretty much. It's contacting a lot of people, but it's worth it. It's worth connecting with anyone and everyone in the whatever fields may get you to the next level.
And let me tell you something, Taylor. You've learned a valuable lesson at such a young age. It's not what you know in this life. It's who you know. Isn't that correct?
Pretty much, yes, sir. That's pretty much what led to all the interviews that happened, and man, it just happened in a crazy span of time, I tell you what.
But you know something?
What's up?
You utilized social media the same way I did. I was able to recruit. I was able to recruit all these baseball players through social media, but I was in my 40s by that time. I didn't have the luxury of being a young guy out of law school to go and go to Craigslist. There was no such thing as Google or anything else, and you made the most of this. Now, when you recruited these players, and I think there was 8 of them to start, did you have any
Pretty much, yes, sir.
Yeah, did you have any concerns how this is going to go, or you had the rules and all that just laid out already?
We pretty much got together and got the rules pretty much written out. We structure our organization to each individual player based on their skill and ability level. And so during games, they would be pitched to based on their ability level. Many are thrown to fast overhand regular speeds, but some do underhand, some even hit off the tee. So it's just very structured.
And the thing is, you are very flexible in your program, like you just mentioned. The structure is based on your social skills and your needs, and if you need a tee, you're willing to provide it.
Yes, sir. Very much.
Let me ask you this question. Where did you come up with the money, or did people donate, or did you go get used equipment, and not only create a wonderful website that you have, but also provide for the players in your league?
Right now we have 2 wood bat sponsors. One is called BOMS, BOMSS, and it's run by an ex-Marine out of Hendersonville, Tennessee. Now, for each of the bats that he sells, he gives some of the proceeds back to veterans and Veterans Affairs and such as that thing. And each letter in BOMS stands for one of his colleagues who passed away during battle, who lost their lives during battle. And the other bat sponsor is Phoenix Bats, who is more known to provide some of their bats to major league players. So we use major league bats, and we use a ball that we're having a hard time trying to find more balls right now because we can't hardly find a seller online who sells them, and we're trying to get through to Rawlings to see if they still even make it. And
it's a softer ball than the regular hard ball.
Correct. Yes, sir. We used to be able to get them at a discount chain for relatively $2 a piece, and then once they ran out, we had to go to a private seller for around $8, $9, and $10 a piece, and now he ran out, so now we're struggling to find where to exactly buy them from, and see, we're trying to get to a higher up in Rawlings so that we can maybe get some answers.
Let me ask you this question. How did you go about getting your sponsors or contacting Rawlings? Do you send an email, follow it up with a phone call like I would? No one returns. You call the blue-haired secretary. You ask for help to speak to those who can help you. How did you go about and even get sponsors to sell this?
Well, some folks actually called us, and then others I would write an email to them and explain our needs and try to get some back to them in return, whether it be advertising on our website or advertising in our game programs in our November event, where we have a lot of fans come. And really, all of it's just a godsend. I mean, it's really helped us.
Well, you know something? I like to always believe there is a God, and He's good.
Absolutely.
And and He's going to do this. But there's also a saying God helps those who help themselves. And perseverance is the number one asset anyone could have in this life, which you've mentioned earlier, saying, well, if Route 20 is closed, you're not going to go around it, and you're going to go try to go through it and overcome the obstacles, which you did, and which was Calvin Coolidge, who was our president back in the 1920s, when a reporter asked him, Mr. President, don't you think intelligence is the most important asset a person could have? He responded, no, perseverance is. I know a lot of educated idiots. So, but you see, you got stuff done, Taylor.
Yeah.
And one of the things you got done, how'd you reach out to Ken Vanderpool, who was in the Atlanta International Umpires?
Well, here's the thing. Ken's just been so great to us, and we decided to reach out to them because we needed umpires for our organization. We needed umpires for games, which we were in the very early stages of trying to develop the rules for that, and what type of rules to go after, and which kind of evolved from ever since we started doing the games. And here's how I remember the first conversation. I found his website, searched it on Google, and then saw some of the other charity work that he had done. And I decided to give a call just to kind of get a quote and see how much the organization would have to fork up, or whether I'd have to fork up out of my own pocket, because I didn't really have much of anything at the time. And he said, you know what, we'll offer it to you. We'll offer our umpires to y'all at no charge. We really want to help y'all get this going. And they really have. They've helped us in many ways, many more ways than you could possibly think of. Just absolutely phenomenal.
Vanderpool, I read, took a huge interest in this. And what ways, name some of the ways that these umpires were able to help the organization.
They donated a lot of uniform pants and caps and that sort of thing for our organization, and that's just been great for the players. Gives our guys a more official look, and just by providing their services, they've added legitimacy to our program. It's just great.
I wish I could see that, man. It's like people are starting to, this is still in its infant stage. And let me ask you this question. Do you have your own field yet, or you still have to use the local fields? And
we pretty much still have to use the local fields that we use at McEachern Memorial United Methodist Church, and Sean Wynn has been just great to us. He's let us use the fields at no charge, and it's just been a great thing for all of us in the community.
And let me ask you this. How is the turnout for spectators on the games?
It's growing, sir. It's growing, and that's a great thing. Now, our November event, we really try to advertise it as much as we possibly can, because that's the event where our players who make 70% or more of the practices and games get to play with and against professional baseball players, current and former, from various leagues around the United States. And some even had come from Canada, and one had played in Japan last year. So
wow.
That event was phenomenal. We probably had 300 or 400 people come last year.
Wow.
But we really want to amp it up and get her going. We had Timothy Miller, who was from the forgive me if I get the name wrong. I really don't know much about the symphony and that stuff. But Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, I think it's called. But we all know him because he sings God Bless America and sometimes the national anthem for the Atlanta Braves and Atlanta Falcons. He came last year and sang God Bless America and the national anthem at our event. And, man, it was just surreal being on that field with him, doing this thing that thousands of people watch and listen to on the radio and TV around the world. It's just crazy.
You know what? I think you just answered my next question. How surprised were you that this just took off the way that it did?
it's just been a dream of mine, and I'm happy to see it thrive, sir.
And I think, a lot of people, I saw the interviews, no one was more prouder or influential or supportive than your mother, Cindy. Let's talk about what she felt about this whole thing that you started.
Absolutely. She's just been so supportive of me throughout my entire life. Has always come to bat for me when I needed it, and she's hit a grand slam pretty much every time. Not many times can you say that someone can bat 1,000. She's definitely bat more than 1,000 for me, and I'm just blessed to have her in my life. And really, yeah, I am.
Now, as you were getting this up last year, your mother suffered a heart attack.
Man, that was just a horrific experience, to be honest with you. I don't think anybody's gonna say, oh, I went to the hospital and I had fun.
Yeah.
But, it was an experience. It was a learning experience. That's the best thing we took out of it, and we made necessary, healthier changes in our lives, and really, everybody in our organization, we were supposed to start. Our very first practice was supposed to start the week she had the heart attack. And everybody was just so supportive of us, and, we're thankful. We're thankful that she's still here, and, we're just thankful to have everything that we've gotten.
Let me ask you, now I know you don't charge any fees for people to come and play for your organization. Do you charge anyone to come see the games, like $5 a ticket, like a minor league team and stuff like that?
It is with the donation. So it's sort of like that. We structure it sort of like a minor league game, but the ticket price is basically a donation. They come in free, and then at the bottom of maybe one of the early innings, we pass around some sort of jar, and they can donate and put their money in the jar.
And in Georgia, because I know one of your goals is to make this national and international. And,
yes, sir.
And you're going to get that, because I could feel your passion, and I had to work also against all odds like you did. And you really have strong faith in God, which is an excellent thing you don't see in many people today. But in Georgia, besides Dallas, do you have people traveling from all parts of the states, maybe even Alabama or Tennessee to the north, to come watch you folks?
I remember in November we had somebody from Alabama, we had somebody from Chattanooga, which is in Tennessee right above the Georgia-Tennessee line. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. We did broadcast it nationally on Steve Major Sports website. But this year we're looking to expand on that, and we've opened up our new YouTube channel as well. And we're trying to experiment with live broadcasts and that sort of thing too. So we hope to gain even bigger following in November with that,
And let me ask you this question: with this whole aura that's surrounding the excitement that's getting publicized, has there been any negativity, like any backlash about a league that is for handicapped players? Like, again, we're dealing with medical issues, we're dealing with a risk of injury. Have you heard any negativity regarding that?
I really haven't, but if there is, the best thing to do is ignore it and continue our way.
Yeah.
But
have the lawyers like myself come in and say, well, you need insurance for you to play and to protect yourself just in case there is a risk of injury and you are playing under an organization. The organization could get sued.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things that, because I know when I was younger, before I went to law school, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then you realize, Well, you just can't go out and do that. You have to have the lawyers behind you, which is another reason why I became a lawyer. You have to have
Yeah.
insurance. And your idea of what could be, can be, if someone gets hurt, that could be the end of the organization. Now let me ask,
Right.
now let me ask you this question. Right now, where is your geographical zone besides Dallas heading? Are you planning to open up other chapters in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee? What's going on in the immediate future right now?
Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're planning on working on soon. We're working on a community packet for those in their towns to start their own alternative baseball programs. And the idea is to form a big super network internationally. We've had people in 25 plus different countries ask us for support and assistance in helping them get their own programs up and running. So the idea is to grow nationally and internationally, and that's just a great thing for raising awareness and acceptance. That's a huge step. We just have to, once we get it done, we'll start shopping it out there and hopefully completing that step.
Now, let me just say something here, Taylor. You do realize November 12th, I think, is when you played your tournament last year. If that date is correct, November 12th, as I read, that's the day I almost died last year. I went into surgery. This is deja vu because I have diabetes, and I had to give up my career at 41. And I've had 7 surgeries on my feet. And last year, my heart stopped on the table on November 12th, which was a Friday.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, and, my show had gone off the air earlier. Around the time when you were getting your league up, my show went off because my producer retired, and I went in. There was an infection in my foot after bunion. They had to chop a few bunions off my feet, and diabetes does not work with bunions. And I literally, they had to get me back from the table. But since then, my diabetes has been in remission. My feet have recovered like never before. And soon I'll be
That's good.
Yeah, and it happened the same day as this game, which is
Wow.
really like, you talk about a godsend, I'm sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
Oh, you could just feel God in the area over here. Let me ask you this question about expansion. If local communities and the international communities do end up having a chapter, their own chapters, would they be affiliated with your organization?
In some form, but in a large part, they're independent.
They are.
But they would be a part of a network where if people went to us to look for an alternative baseball club, I would probably send them to the closest one to them based on who supplies for what needs and what skill levels.
Because besides just learning about, and doing this, for you, in the long run, if you're going to do this full time, and by the way, are you doing this full time right now, or are you still working another job while doing this?
Oh, I'm doing this full time. I'm doing this and Toastmasters and speaking.
Okay. If you want to do this full time, you got to think like our president, Donald Trump. Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You sponsor something in Japan, you get, like, it's almost like opening a Subway, Taylor. You're
Right.
going to own and operate it, but you got to give 14% of your earnings to the Subway Corporation in California or Indiana, or wherever it is. And then will you be doing stuff like that where you get a certain amount of the profits because you helped establish these things?
Yes, the packet that we will shop out to them will be $99.95, and there will be yearly renewal dues.
All right. So, at least you're thinking on an entrepreneurial level, which I think, you're doing something, like you said, it's a godsend. It's a godsend for these folks with disabilities to come to your organization, make it in abilities. You're having the time of your life, and you'll be making a living off of it. And in the words of Steve Jobs, if you really love something that you're doing, is it really work?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to you, this is like you're a kid in a candy store. Every day you wake up, you are, Taylor. You're living the American dream at 21 years old.
Yeah.
You got people going into the major cities every day, fighting every degenerate off the street to get to their office, and slave some horrible, screaming death 8 hours a day. They come home, they're miserable. They go back to their wife and kids, they're miserable. This is something like, you know, like a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates or, you know, this is something that you've created inside your own mind, and now you're living it.
It's awesome, sir. It's just great. We are in need of many donations, though, whether it be monetary or equipment. And if those who are interested in donate can go on our website and press the PayPal button on our home page. And we really would appreciate the support of everybody, you know.
And you know what?
Help us live the dream.
You're living the dream. But let me tell you something.
Yes.
On all my websites, that whatever you're in, I'd like you to go on and post your YouTube videos and ask for a donation from its members. I got about 40,000 folks in all my Facebook pages. I want to get out the word about your organization because just like the Negro Leagues and Women in Baseball, which I've just formed, and the Dead Ball era, which is a very small part of baseball history, your organization falls into that kind of niche whereby, again, there has been some discrimination against folks with disabilities because, again, you know, sensory perception, motor skills, whatever it is. And I think it's important that people understand and learn from this because you are a true pioneer. There is no question about it. You are a true. Let me ask you this question: When folks come to your organization, and you got to be at least 16, right?
Correct. We lowered the age limit to 15 this past season.
And do you train them? Do you have training sessions, pitching sessions? Do you have pitching coaches and hitting coaches that are helping instruct? How does things like that work?
So our season works like we do practice, and then the next week after both practices, we have a game. And the practices are structured to each player based off their ability level, and we tailor the practices to these drills that we do, and we tailor to each player's skill level.
And let me ask you this question. On your website it says, look, you got to be at least 15, 16, but the sky's the limit. So I could be 83 years old and come onto the field.
Absolutely.
Have you have any guys in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s?
Plenty of them.
Oh.
We had one in their 30s last season, and then we have a player coach who is in his 60s. Then we have another player coach who's in his 50s.
That's fantastic. And let me ask you this. On your website, we just spoke about it, you don't even have to have experience. You're going to teach you. They're going to teach you.
Exactly.
The fundamentals of baseball.
It's all about teaching the old school techniques in an old school manner where everyone is just accepted and encouraged for who they are. It's just amazing.
How about the ladies? Do you have a lot of girls joining up and women joining up for this? Because, you know, you can't forget about the ladies either.
Of course, I mean, we're gender neutral. We don't discriminate against any genders, but we haven't really had any to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do, you know, we're open. We're wide open.
Now, let me ask you this stuff. It's a tough question. Would the women, if you get enough women and ladies and girls, would you branch out and start a league of their own like their movie, or would you integrate them with the other male players?
Possibly integrating them, but have an even ratio.
And everybody is supposed to bring their batting helmets, bats, Or are they just optional and you supply the stuff from your...
We supply the bats because we have 2 bat sponsors. They just mainly bring their gloves and their sports drinks if it's 92 outside like it was this past Tuesday. And we just give it our best shot each week.
Now you do realize November 12th is still like 50, 60 degrees for you down in Georgia. Up by me, it already snows. So when you do expand and you do have, like, say, an end tournament, you got to be careful of the geographical zones because you could be up in Canada somewhere where it's snowing in October, and you're still down in Georgia, which, thank God for hot weather down there, you got baseball well into November.
Yeah. Well, I have a few buddies of mine in Canada, and they actually play inside of soccer domes in that time.
Yeah, you need that, and
yeah.
And when you do practice, what are some of the drills you run for these folks when you're practicing?
We do base running, we do batting practice, we do situational drills where we're turning double plays, we do fly ball drills. We're going to start in the fall. We're going to work a little bit more on technical base running and base stealing and that sort of thing.
And let me ask you this: you prefer to use the wooden bats, like we mentioned earlier in the program, to preserve the purity of the game, as you mentioned on your website?
Yes, sir.
Why no aluminum bats? The problem I see here is like back in the 1960s. You had Charlie Finley of the Oakland A's. He owned the A's, and he saw, look, football's becoming more of a commodity than baseball because why? Because people like to see scoring. So let's get what's called a designated hitter in the American League and let the pitcher sit and drive in more runs. How come you didn't feel that same way where with an aluminum bat, ball can go longer, farther, deeper, but the wooden bat instead?
We just really like to maintain the original techniques of it, how it was invented. Here's the thing, the ball that we use resembles a ball that was used closer to the dead ball era.
Mm-hmm.
And so why not match it with some historical stuff to go with it? We even do the old-fashioned bat toss they even still do in some vintage games around the U.S., the 4-H game, because it promotes turn taking. And it helps them with their social skills in that sort of sense.
And when you're playing the actual game here, now this is something I found very interesting off your website here. When a player is hitting, the player before, if his skill set wasn't for overhand, you would pitch him underhand, but the next batter, who might have a different set of skill set, you'd pitch overhand.
Correct. It depends on each player's skill set and really what they can do. We're trying to work everybody in to become the best that they can be. That's the ultimate goal. Either way, it's still a fair thing for all of us, and it's just a fun game every single week we have one.
I find this. I can't even imagine. It must be so fun watching. You have an underhanded pitch, and then you go and you throw the next pitch overhand. Let me ask you something. Other dimensions of the pitching mound to the batters. I know you use the fields around the church. Do you have to restructure the pitching rubber when you have to have a game? So, like, if it's an underhanded pitch, you can move closer so the person can hit it, and if it's overhand, or is it all done from the same spot?
Here's the thing about the fields that we use. They have 2 rubbers. And so what we've kind of implemented is a pitching box where you can pitch anywhere from inside the square. If it's underhand, you would go to the front rubber, and if it's overhand, you would go to the back rubber.
That sounds fantastic. And how about the batter box, for that matter? Is the batter box stretched forward, backwards, side to side in order for a person with, say, not as good skills as another to, get a fair shake at hitting the ball?
Really, the batter boxes for everyone is basically the same as it is in the pros, but there's really not he doesn't line the batter's box on his fields, so we just don't use it. As long as they're fairly squared against the plate, and we think that they have a fairly reasonable shot at hitting it, we really don't bother with that too much, but in our pros game, we use every rule that they use in the pros.
So you use regular pro baseball rules and say not college rules or high school rules or any of that. But
correct.
Okay, now let me ask you this question then. For the umpires, do you have a two-person system, a three-person system, a four-person system?
We have a two-person system in our regular games, but at the pro game, we have a four system.
And if it does go into, say, because your organization is going to get big enough where you're going to have league play and playoffs and series, will you institute the six-person crew like they do in the World Series where you have two in the outfield now?
That's a possibility.
Because there's so many different parables here on what you could do and what else is going on. Now, let me ask you this. The dugouts, are you in shade, hopefully? Because it gets hot in Georgia.
We do have some shade in our dugout, but it's still pretty good.
Because yesterday I was hiding under a tree. It was 93 up here when my son was playing Little League, and that was 5:30 at night. Okay, we started the week off at 34 degrees early in the morning, and now it's 93 degrees. So,
oh my goodness, that's not jump.
Yeah, it's like one day I'm sitting there frigid cold, like last Saturday morning we're all bundled in blankets, and last night it's like I'm dying underneath a tree because it's so hot, and of course humidity not as hot as Georgia. Again, you're closer to the equator. Anything coming down the pike this summer? Any further expansion? Any tours you're going on speaking engagements out of the state?
Let's keep in touch, and my thing is to stay tuned because you never know where we'll be at. Now, I do want to say that we do have an exhibit on display right now at the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame in Macon, Georgia.
Yes,
and it's just absolutely phenomenal down there, and it's worth it to go down there and take a look and see what else they got down there. It's just a phenomenal facility. It's the biggest state sports hall of fame in all of America.
Yeah, and you also have the Ty Cobb Museum down there as well, with Wesley Fricks. He's in Royston, Georgia. You might want to give him a call and see about maybe putting some of your exhibits on display in the Ty Cobb Museum, if you would allow that.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I've met up with Miss Ridgway, who works there. I think that's what her name is. When I went to visit the Ty Cobb Museum, and I handed her a packet. But hopefully we'll hear something soon.
All right, good. Now let me ask you this question. Did I forget to ask you anything that you might want to tell the folks at home listening to this? That's something, hey, I must have missed or something, or do you think I covered it all?
I think you covered pretty much everything, but we're always looking for new players. We're always needing donations. We're always needing help of some sort, and we will really appreciate it for sure to help us expand globally and to be able to continue to hit, run, inspire, and succeed through Alternative Baseball Organization, Inc. And our next pros game will be on November 11th at Mount Perrin North Church Baseball Park, they call it, and in Marietta, Georgia, and it'll be on November the 12th, and it would take place at 2 o'clock. And it's going to be great. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
That's fantastic. Hang on to the line. I'm going to end the show, and then I'll talk to you after I end the show. Folks, this was a great episode. You know, we got Taylor Duncan. He's being a pioneer at such a young age on baseball and handicapped, and making you handicapped into something that you can go forward, and making disabilities into abilities. The young man has just a wonderful outlook, and he's doing such a great job. I invite all of you to go to his website, alternativebaseball.wixsite.com. Check out the website, go through, learn about this league. It's going to be a powerhouse, and I am all for this, and you probably will be able to see a lot of his postings on my site because, as you know, I just earlier I invited Taylor to do this. So, Taylor, I hope you had a good time today, man. I had a great time.
Thank you, sir. It's a lot of fun, sir. Thank you.
All right, hang on the line. Folks, go to the site, go patron, baseball with folks who have disabilities. And in the immortal words of Edward R. Murrow, folks, good night and good luck.